Hannah was just minutes away from reaching school, just one more turn down a quiet street in Camp Hill, just one more moment to make it through the morning. But she never made it. It was a midweek morning. The sun had risen early over the quiet suburbs of Brisbane, Australia. People were walking their dogs. Children were getting ready for school. And then, everything was consumed by flames in less than a minute. A car screeched to a stop outside a house. A man washing his vehicle turned his head just in time to hear a scream that ripped through the still air. "Call the police, he's going to kill me." Inside a silver Kia Sportage, a woman was struggling desperately, her eyes wide with terror, her hands clawing at the window. Beside her sat a man, his gaze blank, his jaw clenched, holding a lighter in his hand. And then a deafening explosion. Flames erupted like a nightmare, without warning, without escape. A horrifying scene unfolded. A young mother, engulfed in fire, stumbled out of the vehicle. She screamed not for herself, "My kids. My babies are still in the car. Why didn't I stay with them?" The fire consumed everything. No one could stop it. No one could act fast enough. The incident happened on the morning of February 19, 2020, but the sounds and images are forever burned into the memory of that neighborhood and the entire nation of Australia. A young mother, beautiful, strong, full of life. 3 innocent children, sweet, joyful, on their way to school. And a man, the one they once trusted, the one they called husband, the one they called dad. Why did he do it? What drives a man to set his own family on fire? Have you ever considered that evil doesn't always wear the face of a stranger in the dark, but sometimes lives in the eyes you know, the voice you love, the arms that once held you close? We often think of domestic violence as bruises, screams, blood, but sometimes it starts with a glance. A controlling question, "Where are you going today? Why are you wearing that dress?" And slowly, piece by piece, freedom disappears. Trust is strangled. Life begins to suffocate. Hannah Clark, 31 years old, was a fitness trainer, a devoted mother, a woman full of light. But she died in a fire, forced back into that fatal car with her ex-husband, Rowan Baxter. And she wasn't the only one. Her 3 children, Aaliyah 6, Leanna 4, and Trey 3, never made it out either. No one could save them. What led to that moment? A father who held his children close, not to protect them, but to die with them. A mother who knew she was being watched, threatened, but no law protected her in time. A community, friends, family, neighbors, who saw the signs but never imagined the end would come so fast, so violently. Why couldn't a woman once described as independent, strong, radiant, escape the grip of a man she once loved? Why did the law, the police, and the people around her, who all knew something wasn't right, still fail to protect her and her children? And the most terrifying question of all: if this happened to someone you love, would you have time to save them? In this video series, I'll walk you through every step of Hannah's journey, from the first days she met, fell for, and married Rowan, to how she gradually lost herself in a marriage built on control and abuse. The early warning signs from a man hiding cruelty behind a model husband image. How Hannah, like so many victims, never realized she was being abused. And finally, the horrific case that woke a nation. You might think, "That would never happen to me." But Hannah thought that too. She was the kind of woman everyone loved, a mother who would give everything for her kids. A friend, a daughter, a colleague, someone who brought light to others. But that light was extinguished by the very man who once promised to protect her. This wasn't just a murder. It was a warning. A wake-up call about domestic violence, the silence of communities, and the dangerous line between love and control. It's also a tribute to a woman who used her last breath to name her killer, so others might not suffer the same fate. So let's go back, detail by detail. Because sometimes, it's in the most heartbreaking stories that we learn how to save each other. Just an ordinary Wednesday morning, just another quiet street. But in a few short minutes it became the doorstep of hell. Camp Hill, a peaceful suburb southeast of Brisbane, Australia, tree-lined streets, red-tiled roofs, bicycles resting against wooden fences. A place everyone believed was heaven for families and children. In Camp Hill, you didn't lock your doors, you greeted your neighbors every morning. Kids played in front yards without worry. And Hannah Clark once believed it was the safest place to raise her 3 children. She lived with her parents, Sue and Lloyd, after separating from her husband, Rowan Baxter. Hannah had walked away from a controlling marriage, trying to rebuild her life. Those who knew her described her as a mother who never took her eyes off her kids. Hannah always showed up with a smile, despite the pain she carried deep inside. That morning, February 19, 2020, began like any other. 6:00 a.m. Hannah put on her workout clothes to coach her early clients. 7:00 a.m. she returned home, got the kids up, made breakfast. 7:30 a.m. dressed in leggings, a tank top, hair tied high, she loaded the children into her Kia and headed to school. The car rolled out of the driveway with 4 lives inside. No one knew it would be the last time anyone saw her alive. As the Kia turned onto Raven Street, less than a kilometer from home, Hannah stopped. Someone blocked the road. Rowan Baxter, her estranged husband, appeared out of nowhere, holding a knife, eyes filled with rage. In an instant, he jumped into the car, forcing Hannah into the passenger seat. The car kept moving, now under his control. A neighbor heard the screeching tires. Another heard a blood-curdling scream from inside. "He's got a lighter, he's got petrol." And then it exploded. The Kia Sportage burst into flames in the middle of the street. Residents screamed, dialed emergency services, ran for fire extinguishers. A mother, burning alive, stumbled out of the car. She was still conscious. She was still speaking. Rowan did it. He poured petrol in the car. "My kids are still inside." Her final words were an accusation. Even burned on 97% of her body, Hannah chose to speak. So no one would doubt, so no one would excuse. Police and paramedics arrived within minutes. But it was too late. The children, Aaliyah, Leanna, and Trey, died instantly from burns and smoke inhalation. Rowan, who started it all, stabbed himself next to the vehicle. He died on the spot. Hannah was rushed to the hospital. She fought. She stayed awake, but she didn't make it. She passed that afternoon. Quietly, proudly, in excruciating pain. Australia was shaken. Live news reports streamed from the scene. Reporters wept on air talking about Hannah. Images of the charred car, white cloth-covered bodies, and Hannah's mother's devastated face. No one could believe this happened in Camp Hill, in Brisbane, in Australia, but this wasn't an accident, not a sudden fit of rage. It was the result of years of threats, ignored, dismissed, overlooked. And no one in her world acted soon enough to stop it. Friends of Hannah had seen it coming. They told stories of how Rowan controlled every part of her life, what she wore, where she went, who she spoke to. He didn't allow her to wear bikinis. He wouldn't let her leave the house unless she told him in advance. When she finally left the marriage, Rowan began stalking her. He sent anonymous emails. He made false reports to child services, accusing Hannah of abusing their kids. Her parents had called the police. They filed for restraining orders, but everything seemed to fall into the cracks between legal agencies. And when Hannah and her 3 children died, burned alive in broad daylight, it all became horrifyingly clear. Rowan had planned it. He carried petrol on him. He knew the school drop-off schedule. He knew no one would be able to stop him if he moved fast enough. Peace had been shattered, not by a gunshot, but by years of silence surrounding domestic abuse. A silence that lasted far too long until it killed 4 innocent people. "We lived in the safest neighborhood in the city. We thought stuff like this only happens in movies. As if only I had noticed more. Those were the words spoken by Camp Hill residents after the tragedy. But sadly, they came too late. What about you? Have you ever heard a friend say, "My husband is so controlling"? Have you ever noticed someone quietly pulling away from their social life and thought, "They must be busy"? Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and missed the silent scream? What happened to Hannah wasn't random. It was the result of neglect, of people saying, "It's probably not that serious. It's a private matter. Let them sort it out." It came from not believing women, even when they were crying for help. A few months before her death, Hannah posted on Facebook, "Believe women when they say they're being controlled, threatened. Sometimes you don't get a second chance to help." He was a fitness coach. He posted sweet photos holding his kids. He told the world he adored his wife, but behind the smile it was something else. A darkness of jealousy, obsession, and violence. Hannah Clark, 31, a mother, fitness enthusiast, a free-spirited woman. Rowan Baxter, 42, her ex-husband. He once had everything, a family, a business, respect at his gym. But there was one thing he couldn't accept losing: control. Before her name made headlines, Hannah was just a devoted mother. She loved sunflowers. She adored her cats. She once dreamed of opening a cozy cafe by the sea. She had 3 children: Aaliyah 6, Layana 4, and Trey 3. People remember the photos she shared online. Her 3 kids piled on the couch, messy hair, giggling. The caption read, "Mum is exhausted, but Mum is happy." She once said, "I don't love him anymore, but I believed he was a good father." Their marriage lasted almost a decade. From the outside, everything looked normal, but behind closed doors, it was a maze of control. Rowan didn't allow her to use social media without showing him posts first. He checked her phone messages. He monitored her bank accounts. He forced her to cut ties with her friends. Even her outfits, like gym leggings or tank tops, had to be approved by him. Friends described him as quick-tempered, irrationally jealous, the type to go cold if Hannah smiled at another man. After years of emotional suffocation, Hannah finally made the decision. She left. She moved out with her kids, returning to her parents' house in Camp Hill. It seemed like a new beginning. But in reality, the fear was just getting started. She went to the police. Her family filed for protection orders. Family court issued a temporary restraining order. Rowan was banned from coming near her or the children. But a restraining order is just a piece of paper. And Rowan, like many abusers, knew it. He sent emails from fake accounts. He took photos of the kids from a distance and sent them to Hannah. He even accused her of emotional abuse, filing complaints with government agencies. One time he snuck into Aaliyah's school. He grabbed her during recess and ran off. Hannah found her 6 hours later, shaking, hiding in a school bathroom, not understanding what had happened. Then came the final spark. The family court ruled Hannah would have full custody of the children. Rowan would only be allowed 2 hours of supervised visitation per week. To a man obsessed with control, this was a death sentence. Is he planning something? Would he actually do something crazy? But Hannah shook her head. He loves the kids, he would never hurt them. But behind the scenes, Rowan had already started preparing. He'd been gathering supplies for weeks. He bought a can of petrol and hid it in the trunk of his car. He messaged friends things like, "If I can't have them, no one will. They want to destroy my life, I won't die alone." Police examined the burnt-out Kia. Traces of petrol were found running from the backseat, where the kids had been strapped into the front of the car. A broken lighter lay beneath the passenger seat. A box of razors, one blade bloodied, was found at Rowan's feet. On the sidewalk where Hannah collapsed after escaping the flames, a scorched handprint was burned into the asphalt. Neighbors used wet towels, bottled water, anything to put out the fire. One man tried to jump into the car, but the heat forced him back. When Hannah arrived at the hospital, burned across 97% of her body, she could still speak. And she did. Rowan did this. I saw him with the lighter. I saw him smile. Police ruled it a murder-suicide. Planned, calculated, cold. At Rowan's home they found a handwritten journal they deserved to burn. A printed map of the school route, with times and locations. A recorded voice memo where he said, "I'll make sure they remember my name forever." Inside his pocket during the autopsy was a half-burnt note with one final line scribbled, "God will understand. I did it for love." The public was horrified. Media outlets called it the most brutal domestic violence killing in Queensland's history. Thousands gathered for candlelight vigils and protest marches. The names Hannah, Aaliyah, Leanna, and Trey were etched into the heart of a nation. But from that moment, Australia finally asked the question it had avoided too long. Why couldn't anyone stop him? Had everyone seen the signs but failed to act? Had the legal system truly done all it could to stop men like Rowan Baxter? I did everything, called police, filed restraining orders, told my friends. But no one could truly protect me. Hannah 2 weeks before she died. Has justice been served? That's the question many asked after Rowan Baxter burned to death alongside the woman and children he claimed to love. But in the eyes of Hannah's parents, no justice could ever heal a scorched heart. Lloyd Clark, Hannah's father, later recalled, "There are no school runs anymore, no daycare pickups, just empty hours and memories that cut like glass." No one can truly understand what it's like for a father to bury his daughter and his 3 grandchildren in 4 small coffins. No one can imagine the pain of choosing burial clothes for children who were reduced to ashes. At their funeral, Hannah's white coffin was laid beside 3 smaller ones, decorated with sunflowers and soft toys. People who attended said, "We've never felt sadness so thick in the air." But amid the grief, a decision was made. The Clark family would not be silent. They would turn pain into purpose. After the tragedy, Lloyd and Sue Clark founded an organization called Small Steps for Hannah. Its mission, to raise awareness about domestic and family violence, to change the laws to protect women and children, to educate communities about the early signs of coercive control. We lost 4 lives, but if we can save just one more family, we have to try. Since then, they've spoken at over 150 schools, connected with 2,000+ survivors, and campaigned to reform Australia's domestic violence laws. And the conversation finally changed. People started to talk openly about invisible violence, abuse that doesn't leave bruises, control that doesn't shout but whispers in every decision, fear that grows not from fists but from gaslighting and surveillance. Phrases like, "Why are you wearing that? Don't talk to other men's. If you love me, delete your male friends," are now being recognized for what they are, signs of abuse. Even Hannah didn't realize she was being abused, not until it was too late. She didn't know she was being controlled. Neither did we, until it was far, far too late. Sue Clark, Hannah's mother. Hannah's death was more than a personal tragedy. It became a national wake-up call. Under public pressure, the Queensland government began taking real action, harsher penalties for coercive control, increased funding for domestic violence support services, electronic monitoring for high-risk offenders. And in 2020, she followed the system, but the system wasn't fast enough. Society wasn't fast enough. And now we're left with the most haunting questions. If that were your daughter, would you have had time to save her? If your child said, "Dad scares me," would you believe them? Would you call the police? Or would you say it's just a domestic issue? Hannah Clark, Aaliyah, Layana, Trey, they are gone, but they are not meaningless. Their names are now etched into the heart of a movement. A new chapter where women can say, "I'm scared," and actually be heard. Share the story, listen deeper, act sooner, because sometimes just one look, one question, one phone call